Welcome to Inside the Studio, where we bring you people in the local community, local and regional authors, and I am so very excited about our guest tonight because she is everything Thousand Islands, everything historic Thousand Islands. Susan Smith, thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
Well, thank you. This is really wonderful.
And it's exciting. We have a lot of ground to cover. You are a gem to me, because you have created this book right here. This is just the beginning of our conversation, called The First Summer People. And I want you to talk to me about where the passion and desire came to write this book, because living where we live, there's lots of literature out here like this. So talk to me about why and what makes it unique.
Well, it really started out in the 70s when my husband and I had a 30-foot cruiser, and we came up from Montreal to spend a couple of weeks in the Thousand Islands. And I honestly couldn't understand why somebody would name an island Bloodletter or Death Dealer. And so we would go into the gas dock and I'd say, why? And the guys would say, I don't know. So I decided that I would try to find out why the islands were named like that. And I spent a lot of time looking at local history books, and I really couldn't find very much. One day I was in the Westmount Library, we lived in Montreal, and I found a book by Juno Haddock, dated I think 1896, and it had a lot of information. And I was so discouraged because I thought, oh my goodness, it's all here. I don't have to do a thing. But afterwards I really said, no, it's missing way. I want to find out everything. So I started, and I went to all kinds of libraries. I went to New York City, I went to the New York Historical Society in Cooperstown. I went all over, and I spent a lot of time in the Canadian Archives and in Ottawa. We lived in Montreal, and I'd take the train back and forth, and it just was a passion.
Yeah, it ignited you.
You can tell.
Well, I love it, though. I love it. You went outside of Canada in the U.S.
Right.
to even discover. Talk to us.
Well, one day I took, our children went to a school, and they went on a field trip, and they went to Upper Canada Village. And on the wall was a chart, a map. And the chart was, it said, was done by Captain William Fitzwilliam Owen, and it was one of 5 charts, and it had all the names on it. So I wanted to find names of the islands. So I wanted to find out where that chart was done. So I went to England one time with a friend, and I spent 2 days at the in Taunton, England, at the Naval Archives. It's the Hydrographic Archives. And when I got there, I asked to see the Owen charts, and they said, we don't have anything by the name of Owen charts. And I was so discouraged. And they had a school group came in, and it was just at the beginning of the punk. They had studs on their things, and anyway, they were really interested in the history of the British Hydrographic Service. And but the man brought over a very dusty book. I've told this story often. He put it on the table, the dust went up, and he said, this is the book where all of the original charts that the British Hydrographic Service did to open up the seas for safe shipping, especially after the War of 1812. And he said these were the first ones printed. And I knew that our islands were our charts were the first ones printed. So as soon as he finished talking, I rushed down, I looked, and he said, yes, that's it. But they're called the Bayfield charts. Bayfield took over after William Fitzwilliam Owen went back to England 2 years later, and Bayfield took over, Henry Wolseley Bayfield. So they were under his name, and they got them out.
Oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
This is exciting. So this is it.
A picture.
Is this upside down?
No. Yeah, it is upside down, you're right.
Okay.
And so this is a version. It came on a microfiche, and I had it made into a chart.
What year?
Oh, this was 1815.
And this was, what was his name?
His name, Captain William Fitzwilliam Owen.
William Fitzwilliam Owen. I need you to say that 13 times fast. William Fitzwilliam Owen. So you found the lengths you went to is so impressive. So talk to me about what you discovered when you dug into this.
Well, first of all, it's probably like anybody that has a passion. You always want one more thing. You never think you've ended it, right? He actually was so brilliant. he decided that there were so many islands, and he put in a memorandum that said there were so many islands that were given different names, but they were the same islands locally, and there were so many islands that didn't have any names on them at all, and they were important. So he decided he would do it in a systemized fashion. So he did that group up there, yeah, this group here.
Okay.
That's the Admiralty group. So that was named after the members of the British Admiralty
Okay.
office
Okay.
in England. So they weren't all British admirals. They were the members of the office. In fact, there's one island there called the Clerks. That's our island. There's one, the Porter. Porter is this one right here.
Okay.
And now that's a very popular park island. So he did the Admiralty group, and then down here, Wellesley Island was named after the Duke of Wellesley. 55 islands around were named after officers who fought with Wellington in the Peninsular Wars in France and Portugal.
Wow.
And this is Lake Waterloo, the biggest one. And then all the little islands. So this was one of his officers. Murray Island was one of his officers. So this is Hill. And all of those were named after officers who fought with Wellington. And then this group down here, they were named after the Treasury group. They were the ones that actually gave out the salaries, so they commemorated them. And then over here, he called one group is the Friends. And the Friends, they were all the ships that Owen had sailed on before he came to the Thousand Islands.
So what about, you mentioned when you were boating with your husband, you saw these different kinds of names. Did he name those particular islands? What
Yes,
was it?
he did. Those were the Lake Fleet,
Okay.
which is right here.
Okay.
And the Lake Fleet he named after ships that mostly worked in the War of 1812, but also they were gunboats that they used during the survey.
Wow.
And the most fun was the amateur groups down here. I mean, why would he name the amateur islands? So I kept looking at all the names, and I couldn't find anybody in the British Navy that had those names. And one day I found this little island down here called Jeb, and I saw a picture. It was a painting by Jeb, and so I asked, it was in the Canadian Archives. I asked if they had any information. Oh yes, she said, we have information on all of the artists. So she brought it out, and it said that he was a Royal Engineer. And he was actually the one that surveyed the Fort Wellington around the same time, but he and all of these little islands that were named, they were all Royal Engineers, part of the British Army. So they were amateurs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's,
isn't
so
that
you,
fun?
yes, it's fun. And you took this information and you created this book called The First Summer People. Tell me what is different about this book from the other books that are out there that discuss the islands.
Well, the first part is probably similar to others because it really is a review of the history of the islands. So
Right.
you've got the War of 1812, you've got the American settlement on the islands, Canadians. I wanted it to be how did the first people summer on the islands.
Yes.
So that was sort of the first. And then the second part is a recording of 900 islands. And 900 islands, their acreage, what they might have been sold for originally, tried to find all their first sales. And it was much easier in Canada. They register the islands by, the island is there and then each person is listed underneath it in a registry office. But not so in the United States. And in Jefferson County, they have all of them in big, I would look up your island, and then it would say it was sold by so-and-so. And then I would look up that name, and you had to go back, so you had to get all the names. And these record books are very big and very hard. They're probably all now on microfilm, but anyway, I had a hard time, so I hired a teenager to come over with me one day. And she got all the books out, and I got to read and write all the information.
You dug in, which I
Oh,
love.
yeah, it was really fun.
And so just wrapping things up, I think it's important that folks at home know you're more than the book. You have an online publication you've been the
Yes.
editor of for 14 years. What is
Yes.
it? Tell us.
It's called ThousandIslandsLife.com, It was started by a professor at Syracuse University, Paul Mallow, and he did it for 2 years. It was just a blog, but it was wonderful. It had wonderful history that he knew. He was a professor of architecture, so he knew the history behind many of the buildings. And he wrote that, and I just loved it. And he had a good friend, Ian Corristine, who was a really wonderful Thousand Island photographer. He is, and he died in 2020. But he offered Paul any picture that he wanted. So then Paul was very ill. He had cancer, and he died. And Ian came and asked me if I would take over as the editor. Well, I can tell you I can't spell, and I have a learning disability. I never see pictures, or I never see mistakes. But anyway, I finally decided I should do it, and I've had a wonderful time. We have over 350 authors, about 1,500 articles, and they're all online.
Writing is an act of faith. So it's never about grammar or punctuation, and frankly, what you have done here proves that. First of all, thank you so much for your time tonight. This was so enlightening. Friends at home, if they want your book, can they find it on this website?
It's sold in Clayton at the Ringer store,
Okay.
and in Gananoque at the museum, History Museum on the waterfront. The problem is I did it in 1993. So I did another reprint, and that's almost over. So
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thanks again for joining us. We
Thank you.
appreciate all of the shares.
you can tell I love talking about the Thousand Islands. Thank you very much.
You bet.